Hi, my name's Scott. I'm one of the developers for xLights, and in xLights 2025.9, Dan added support for this generation of palettes using AI. He added support to use Apple Intelligence on the Mac. And what I've been experimenting with is using Ollama, which is an open source software on the PC. So in the change notes, you'll see some things about this, but how do we get Ollama running on our machine? So Ollama is just an open source local. It runs large language models on your PC locally. So they have a website where they have the downloads. You can just download it and install it, which is what I've done previously. Once you download it, they have this dialog that'll pop up. It also runs as a service in your system tray here. You'll see this little llama. And once we do that, you can open it. It's kind of just like a chat type thing. As part of Ollama, you have to pick which model you want to use. So this is like the large language model you want to use. The thing with large language models is for Ollama to run well, this normally runs on your GPU. So I have a NVIDIA Ti 3600, which has 8 gigs of memory, VRAM in it. So for these models to work well, you need to be able to load them into memory. The DeepSeek one here, which is a common one I've been using, they have different levels you can use, and you want to find one that's small enough that it'll fit into your VRAM. So by default, I normally use the 7 billion parameters one, which is what the 7B stands for. If you look, it's only 4 gigs, so that could in theory fit in my VRAM. If you do any of these bigger ones, this is normally bigger. You have to have a really big computer. But for our purposes, I was just going to use this 7 billion one. If you select it in here and type a message, this will automatically in the background download it and make sure it works. So you can see it thinks. And even though it is running on my GPU, it is a little bit slow. But also with Ollama, they support over the network. So you can actually run like Ollama on maybe a desktop in your basement that has a GPU. But if you enable this option, you can then also connect to this over your network. So if you're like sequencing on a network or on a laptop upstairs, you could connect to maybe you have a desktop in the basement with a GPU if you enable this option. This is what I do in xLights quite a bit. So once we have this set up, then we can go into xLights and set up xLights to connect to it. So under File, Preferences, there's this section called Services, and this is where you can enable kind of like where we've been putting new AI services. There is a bug in here that hopefully will be fixed in the next release. These settings don't get enabled until you leave this dialog and come back in, so sometimes this test button doesn't work. So for Ollama, I'm gonna just enable it. Localhost is if you're running it on your local PC. If you're running, like if you're doing your laptop to another, you'd have to look up the IP address of your, other PC and put it in there. There's some other options if you want to do HTTP over a secure connection. I just leave the defaults, but what matters is the model here. I want to put in the model I want to use. So it was DeepSeek, and you could just put :7B for the 7 billion parameters one. But you can also just go to their website here, copy the model name, and then go back in here and paste it, which is what I'll do. So we put that in there. And like I said, this test button doesn't work until you leave and then come back into the settings sometimes. So once we go here, now we can go down here and test it. And when you hit test, it'll talk to the service. It'll try to just do a real basic response and should get it. One thing to note is it won't show in here. I know that was kind of the first thing that threw me. It doesn't show in the chat window for Ollama. It's just all done in the background. So now that we set up, what can we do with it? Well, the feature that Dan added is if you do a new sequence and it's a musical sequence, it'll basically try to find palettes based on the song using AI, what it thinks is good. So if you hit the little hamburger menu here, the 3 lines, now there's an option for generate palettes. So once we do this, it'll pop up. There's the name of the song, artist. You can also this is taken from the metadata of the song, the MP3 data. You can also just put whatever prompt you want in here. But if you just do this, it's kind of the default one. Now we can hit the generate button, and this can be a little bit slow. So it takes a couple seconds there. Basically, under the hood, it made a prompt, send it to Ollama to look for colors that match this song, and it gave you a list of colors that it thinks matches the song, and then we can hit OK, and then now that's our color palette. So we can do this over and over, and we could save this color palette as well. So save as, some of the new features that were added in newer versions. But then we can go in, save it, and we can generate another one if we want. And you'll see sometimes it kind of makes just kind of not very inspired ones. But here's like the prompt it used. So if you did want to put in here and add some more stuff in here to say, give it more details, you can do that. Or sometimes just hitting generate a couple times. You do sometimes just get nothing. That's something that hopefully I think Dan has put a fix in for the next version as well. But so you can just keep pressing it. Sometimes, yeah, you get kind of garbage data, but eventually you'll normally get some color palettes that can be quite, useful or give you some inspiration for your song. So that's basically the feature right now. The Ollama integration also works with like the AI model mapping stuff that Keith added. I personally don't use it because I don't think it doesn't really help too much, but that is also in there. And hopefully in the future, as we work on more AI stuff, I can also integrate it as well. So that's all I wanted to go over today. Thanks for watching.